So I think we should take some time to talk about the emotions involved with coming home from the NICU and life after the NICU. And for me, the homecoming was a day that was filled with all kinds of emotions. A lot of happiness, of course, but a lot of fear. Fear of if I had the ability to take care of my daughter, if I had the ability to catch if something was going wrong, if I had the ability to keep her safe from other germs and things of that nature. And a lot of those fears lasted for several months. All of that was very, very overwhelming for me as far as coming home. How did you feel?
I was very much the same, almost exactly the same.
I feel for me the first 6 months were almost a blur. You're just on like function mode, and whether you're tending to equipment or not, or other children or not, everything you're doing has a purpose and it's scheduled, and there's appointments out of the house, people coming into your home. I can't really remember it that well, to be honest, because I just remember the things that I was doing and not really what I was feeling when I was doing them.
I agree with you 1,000%. We definitely had that. We had a baby home on medical equipment, so we were trying to shed all of that. We had a rehospitalization 5 days after she got home. We were struggling with so many different things with just one child. And I felt like I was worried we were going to become that family, that hospital family, the people that are always in the hospital. And thankfully we weren't. We eventually started shedding medical equipment. Things got better and better, but I started worrying more and more about development. And Becky did not qualify for early intervention out of the NICU. She, in fact, didn't qualify for anything. And I was nervous about that. Well, there was a option on our discharge paperwork for the health department. They had an infant monitoring program where a nurse would come out once a month and a physical therapist would come out every quarter and assess her. So we took that. That was how we monitored her development that first year. I didn't feel like the pediatrician had a real good hang of it. And I'm glad we did, because by 18 months, she actually did qualify for early intervention. It was actually the same day she was diagnosed with asthma, too. So that day was really hard for me, because I really felt like we ended up realizing that we weren't done with this thing called prematurity, not at all. And I was right. How about you?
The same. It's a fear of milestones, whether they're going to be met, if they're going to be met too late. When they come in, is something going to be wrong? When will the sitting up happen? When will the rolling happen? When will the talking and the walking? And as a parent of a premature baby or a medically fragile baby, you don't really know for sure if any of those milestones will ever happen. And the fear of that can be daunting. You lose sleep over that for many, many months. And when one milestone is met, you just go on to moving to the next one that you have to worry about. So my daughter has bronchial pulmonary dysplasia, caused by the breathing tube being down her throat for many, many months, and that leads to asthma and other conditions, and she's had pneumonia several times. Every time there's a runny nose or something going around her house, if she catches it, it ends up turning into pneumonia, and she's back in the hospital for 2 weeks or 1 week or some amount of time. It's been getting better as she gets older, but that's always a fear, and in the beginning it's definitely more fearful because her lungs were so much more critical, and having your baby go back into the hospital after they were already there for so long triggers a lot of emotions, and it puts you right back into that same place. And I think that's something important for parents to recognize.
Right. So tell me about Joy. Where is she at now? She's in preschool?
She's in preschool now, and she's been doing well. She could be going to kindergarten. We elected to hold her back 1 year. We were very lucky, and I think that's an important point to make. Not every state and every county has very good testing for medical issues and milestones. And you have to be a very, very big advocate for your baby, because if you feel that your baby's not getting the necessary services, that really can affect them long term. And it's really the first months to year or two of life when it's really important to get those interventions. And we were lucky. We had many of those, and many of the things that we were told my daughter would never do, she does do. They came later. All of her milestones, every one of them came 6 months to a year, more later than a typical full-term baby, but they all did come, and we're very lucky. She's very tiny. She still has asthma and other really kind of difficult lung issues, so we can't have her around too many children. So we did decide to hold her back. But up through preschool, we were having a lot of interventions going on in our home.
Well, Becky went through preschool, and we did hold her back as well. I hear that from a number of preemie parents, in that they decide to do so. For her, she would have been, if she'd been born on time, she would have, where she's at now is exactly where she would have been. So we decided to go with that and give her that extra time. She ended up in preschool qualifying for Child Find Services, which was very helpful. But when we got to kindergarten, and that's when they evaluate them for an actual disability, for an individualized education plan or IEP, that's when the real stuff started coming out. And I was not prepared for that at all. That was really hard. I remember being in the conference room at the school with like 10 people around the table, including the school principal, my daughter's teacher, a whole bunch of specialists. And they started asking me how I thought Becky was doing. And I thought, well, she's doing okay. I think she's doing well. But I said, something's not right. And I explained, I said, this child was born prematurely. She's got these issues. Something's not right. And that's when the school psychologist looked at me and said, does she look you in the eye? And I said, what? Yeah, I was shocked. I was like, I'm thinking in my head, are you thinking autism right now? Are we actually talking about this now? She's almost 6 years old. And sure enough, they were. We ended up getting her diagnosed with Asperger's, or autism spectrum disorder. And I have to say, that was a huge shock. I didn't expect to see that come. I didn't see it coming, and I was very emotional after that diagnosis. But we went off and running and got her help. She did well. By the time second grade hit, I thought, something doesn't seem right still. And I could see her attention was an issue. And I immediately went to the pediatrician. I said, I want her examined, and I want to evaluate her for ADHD. And I was very vocal about it. There was no more holding back. I think that was a turning point for me, a very big turning point, where I was going to say something, but now I was going to be extremely vocal about it. And so the pediatrician evaluated her. Sure enough, she had ADHD. But for her, that wasn't the end of the story. And it actually, we're now at 13 years old, almost 14, and this past February, she finally got diagnosed with cerebral palsy. And I was in shock again, because I've been asking about her gross motor skills for years. And so all the asking in the world, taking her to a developmental pediatrician, taking her to an orthopedic surgeon for orthotics for her shoes, because her ankles seemed kind of squishy at the gym. All these things, I think about that, and nobody picked up on it. And I even had pointedly asked this orthopedic surgeon, do you think this is CP? No. And if it is, it's very, very mild, but did no diagnosis, no treatment. And it wasn't until this past February that we had the orthopedic surgeon rescript for the orthotics that it all came out. And sure enough, Becky has spasticity in both legs. We now have a diagnosis of mild scoliosis that goes with it. And I thought, you know what? Enough. I'm going to be the most vocal parent in the world, because I'm the expert of my child. And so are you. We preemie parents have to be vocal about our kids. We have to speak up, and we have to put it out there, because no one's going to do it for us. And we really have to be the ones that make the change, because our kids are worth it. And we are worth it too as parents. We have great value. We have great intellect when it comes to our children. And we are the ones that make the biggest difference for them.
I think I would say go with your gut. Although your child may test well on one particular day or not test well on one particular day, that's only a snapshot of time. And if you feel that your child needs more of something or less of something, you know your child best, and you need to advocate to be retested or re-looked at again and go over whatever the educational plan is or intervention plan is, because I think as a parent, you do know best about what is going on with your baby, and if something isn't right, what would you say? So
I'm going to tell every parent out there, every single time I support them, and so will you, that we are the experts of our children. And this after the NICU piece is the biggest piece, and it's really important for them to reach out but push for help.
I think you made some really super good points about the doctors and the staff, and another thing we should mention is the premature babies living at younger gestations these days. There's not a lot of research and studies, so unfortunately there's not a lot of experience out there for the doctors and the pediatricians. How many cases of premature babies that were that small or very sick do they actually have out of their whole caseload? And it's not that high. And there's not a lot of studies out there on what's to come for them. So it's really about your gut and what you feel like that you need your child to have.